welcome everybody to Wednesday Night Live with Reverend Nancy Woods and Reverend Dr. Maureen Hoyt. I never refer to myself that way, but it sounds pretty good to me. I want to welcome you tonight. I want to welcome everybody on the live stream. And as we do at Granada Hills CSL, we do our calls to service, which is called Lighting the Flames of Faith. And we perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples, all faiths, all sentient beings come from that one great universal presence, which we call spirit. Fundamental to this truth is the unifying nature of all religious thought and experience, which we honor here today. As Reverend Kathy lights the first candle, it is for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. The second candle we light for the shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous peoples, the way of primal spirituality. We light the third candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light the fourth candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light the fifth candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths as the path of compassion. We light the sixth candle for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. We light the seventh candle for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of submission to the will of God as the highest calling. We light the eighth candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. The ninth candle we light for all forms of new thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. We light the 10th candle for all those who are as yet unaware of the power and presence of spirit in their lives and for the space that we hold for them at this center. And as Reverend Kathy lights the healing candle, please put silently into the light the names of anyone you wish to have experienced the healing flame of God's eternal love.
And I am indeed so grateful to be here tonight, here at the Granada Hills Center for Spiritual Living. And as I speak in the first person for everyone here and online, I just recognize that God is that one power, that one presence, which is pure love and fellowship and clarity and enlightenment. And I am one with that presence of God, of love, clarity, and enlightenment. I hereby proclaim that this hour-long discussion is a perfect idea in the mind of God, that the right questions are asked, the right answers are revealed, and it is just where I am just feeling love and enlightenment and guidance in every day. And I know right now that everyone here and online, that we are just joining together, all one in this one spirit, to share our ideas and learn something, going from the head to the heart. And so I do give thanks. I give thanks for this wonderful evening hosted by Reverend Dr. Maureen and Reverend Nancy, and for everyone participating here and online. So with deep gratitude, I release my word to the law. I let it be so. And together we say, and so it is. Good evening. Before we start our stimulating discussion, I have a few announcements. On Sunday, practitioners are available after the service for a 2-minute tune-up, and you can also contact a practitioner and find out about them through our online, through our website at CSLGH.org. On April 26th, that's on Saturday at 12 p.m., join Reverend Nancy as she accepts an honorarium award on behalf of Reverend Mike's work he has done with the Granada Hills Business Improvement District. Council member John Lee will dedicate the newly completed Old Granada Village mural project. All are welcome to the reception following. They're at the VFW post. And there's a flyer in Sparks Hall for those here who want to know more about it. April 28th from 6:30 to 9:30, we start a class in spiritual mind treatment. Come explore the techniques and methods to deepen skills and application of principle. This is a 6-week course facilitated with the dynamic collaboration of Reverend Nancy Woods and Andrea Rake. See the flyer and sign-up sheet in Sparks Hall for more information. April 30th, 7 p.m., join us for an evening drumming circle with Boulderjack. Experience the grounding of drum beats and the benefits of being in the present moment. Love offerings are accepted. And save the date for May 21st at 7 p.m. The center will host an open mic. This will be an evening to share 5-minute original short stories, poems, and more. The theme for the evening is sharing the beauty and strength of overcoming life's challenges. Please RSVP to participate and send a summary of your family-friendly entries to admin@cslgh.org or ginny.gamari, Gaimari, @gmail.com by May 14th. And also we accept love, for those in person, we also accept love offerings as well. So I will now turn control over to Reverend Dr. Maureen and Reverend Nancy.
Good. Thank you, Kathy. Yay. Good job. Good job. So tonight, just so you know, the protocol, since you haven't been to a Wednesday Night Live discussion group before, I don't think so. Okay, good. What we do is we pass the mic and we read the paragraphs to start with, just to get ourselves familiar with it. We also allow the privilege of not having to read out loud on the mic if you don't want to do that, because we had some non-English speaking as their language, first language here a couple of weeks ago, and while they speak incredibly good English, they were not comfortable reading. So we let them be bypassed, and we had a wonderful group that night, even in spite of it. And Eddie was so open to sharing his story with us. We kind of fell in love with he and his wife that first time they came. So, all right. So this is what we're studying from Living the Science of Mind, and it's a book of essays that Ernest Holmes wrote. Some of them are as short as this particular one that we're sharing tonight, which is 2.5 pages. But we've had a couple that are 6 pages or more, and we do them over a 2-week period. And there was a lot of conversation about belief, faith, and prayer. I mean, 6.5 pages worth, so we did that in 2 weeks. And that turned out to be a good discussion group. So Rosalie, if you'd like to take the mic and begin with that first paragraph. And since there are fewer of us tonight, maybe do the first two paragraphs. How's that? I'll try. Okay.
Discovery,
Yes,
is it okay?
yes.
Okay, the discovery of God
Ye-
is personal.
Can you put the microphone closer
can.
for the recording? Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. The discovery of God is personal. No one can find God for us. Each individual must do this for himself. We cannot find God outside of the self because we cannot go outside of the self. There is no place where we begin and God leaves off. We can find God only within ourselves. At first, this seems almost blasphemous, as though one were setting oneself up as God. But such is not the case. One is God, forever one with God, an incarnation of the universal. The gift is not of man's endeavor, but of life itself. This is the gift made from the foundation of the world, and it is self-evidently true.
You're going to read the next two paragraphs.
Okay. It does not look as though we could discover God within the self, because we look at ourselves and say, well, look at me. I'm poor, weak, miserable, unhappy. Just I can't even pronounce that word. Disconsolate and forlorn. And you tell me that I shall find God in the midst of this chaotic mass while I call myself. It doesn't look discouraging. It does look discouraging, and I like a forlorn hope. But still, we must consider this the starting point, for there can be no other place to begin on the road to self-discovery. Discovery that leads back to the original force. Gradually, as we share the belief in separation from our consciousness. The child's, what is that?
Chaos.
The chaos produced by it, the inhibitions and inner turmoil. We emerge on the other side of this chaotic mass and find that heaven was waiting there all the time. Nothing had happened to it, as in the experience of the prodigal of old. The Father's house was still where it always had been.
But just wishing, hoping, or longing will not bring about this self-discovery. There must be a persistent and painstaking attempt to separate everything from us that does not belong to the spiritual man or woman. It might be well to use an illustration here. Suppose we have no peace of mind, no contentment, and no security, are confused, and are consequently beset with anxiety,
And uncertainty.
yes, and uncertainty. Anxiety and uncertainty, and feeling that the times are out of joint. How shall we proceed? First of all, we should have at least a sound mental equivalent and psychological basis for a new conviction. How did we get here anyway? We know very well we did not put ourselves here. Nothing is more certain than that man never created himself. He merely awakes to self-discovery.
Therefore, we detach all confusion from the mind by identifying ourselves with the Spirit. God is not poor, not weak, not unhappy. God is not frustrated. God is not in lack. And what is true about God is true about us. Therefore, there is no unhappiness to the real self. There is no insecurity in the spiritual ego. There is no frustration in the mind of God within us. Logic and reason conspire to show us that this must be true, no matter what the appearance may be to the contrary. There is still a spiritual center. Standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch upon its own. We too must keep watch, uprooting a false thought here and another one there, until finally, in both intellect and feeling, we reach back to center, the divine presence within us.
Others may show us how they did this, may even suggest how we can proceed. But there is a path that every person must walk alone, yet not alone, because forevermore there is a spirit that beckons, a presence that feels out towards us as we feel toward it. Someday we shall all rest in its warm embrace. Yes, the discovery of the self is to the self and by the self. There is no use delaying, no use waiting for something to come along or someone who can do this for us, for no such person exists. This is why Jesus told his followers that it was expedient that he go away in order that the Spirit of truth might reveal to them the meaning of everything he had taught them.
We should not wish it otherwise, for if someone else held the key to our palace, how should we enter? If someone else had to live for us, we could never live for ourselves. The great and the long and the meaningful secrets of life is bound up in this self-discovery, and the most fortunate moment is our lives will be moment when we come to realize that we must take ourselves for better or for worse, starting right where we are and disregarding time or effort, counting or as gains only that which conspires to awaken us to the ultimate reality. We shall travel back to the center and the source, but there should be no morbid outlook on this. For why need we encounter more unhappiness? Why not think of the opportunity as one filled with peace and fraught with opportunities? Once we are sure there is a goal to reach and the Spirit is Spirit directing us, we can be certain that we shall one day arrive, perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow. But it is not each step on the road one step closer to reaching our source. Let us all then accept the simple fact that the road to God is through the self, and that the pathway is an ever-increasing experience, can be filled with joy. We can sing as we go along, and why need we deny ourselves the privilege of immediate union? For all the long tomorrows will be but continuations of the short todays. Why not find life here and now?
So the ultimate goal in reading this chapter is, as the notes say on the bottom, that's in Reverend Mike's handwriting, by the way, detach, continue by focusing on Spirit. Detach. And really that's what this is all about. Now, you read the part where it talked about all the things that could possibly go wrong with you. So we're just all going to know in unison, erase, erase, erase. Okay, erase. Because in that first paragraph, where he says, no one can find God for us. Each individual must do this for himself, herself, ourselves. We cannot find God outside the self because we cannot go outside the self. This is a pivotal sentence. There is no place where we begin and God leaves off. We can find God only within ourselves. So what that looks like is, you know, as Ernest Holmes says in the Science of Mind textbook, he said, it's interesting that the Creator would hide God in the place we're least likely to look for God, which is within, right? And so many of us seem to look for some answer out there, some guru, some teacher, some other person who's going to give us the secret. Like everybody else has the secret, but I don't have the secret. And that's not true at all. And we can't be more spiritual than we already are. That's the number one thing that we need to know. Our awareness of how spiritual we are is what gets enlightened, or what gets, what am I trying to say? It grows larger by, pretend you're standing in the middle of a circle. This is your circle of awareness. Well, all of a sudden you come to a Sunday service and you hear Reverend Mike talk about something, and all of a sudden your circle expands a little bit. And then you have a friend like Reverend Nancy Woods, and you have this wonderful intellectual but also incredibly spiritual conversation, and then the circle gets a little bit bigger. And pretty soon, when we're all so evolved that our circles overlap one another, we kind of know we're in the right space. We're where we're supposed to be. Yes.
And that's why
Nancy, you have to use the mic. Please. Don't turn it off, please. I'll leave it on. Thank you.
So that's why, I mean, what exactly the scenario that you just pointed out, that's why I question what he says, we can only find it from ourselves. I think we find it from ourselves.
Within ourselves.
We find it within ourselves. But
Yes.
the way he puts it forward, it feels very lonely to me, the way he does it. And I think we can't do it without community.
Okay.
Because we're all
but-
connected. We
all
are
right.
so
But it says
connected.
but
Well, maybe,
read that sentence again. Let's read
well,
the
I
sentence.
wasn't here for the first part. I just,
Read the sentence. The
No,
last
no.
sentence
the last sentence of what?
in the
First paragraph.
There is no place where we begin and God leaves off. We find God only within ourselves.
Yes.
But we find God within ourselves with the community that we're surrounding ourselves by. So I think that's a very important component of it. That's all I got to say.
I mean, you know,
And it's just what Maureen was saying. You know,
I
we
think-
hear Mike talk, we hear you talk, or whatever.
But it doesn't come from
And then-
without. We only identify with what
Well,
somebody
I
else
guess we're
says
getting
or
semantic.
does. We are.
No,
We are,
so-
which is.
But I feel like community is so important.
I
And
agree.
the connection
I
that we all
agree.
have with each
I
other.
agree that it is.
Yeah.
But if I don't have an awareness of the God presence within me, I would not identify with community that does.
I find, you know, I'm the thing that really struck me when y'all were reading, when Desert read that part about he was describing how could he see all this stuff in himself and still think that I'm an expression of God. I think that those two descriptions are what we wrestle with the most because we want to identify with God. We want to understand that we are the divine presence of life. We want to realize that the truth from everything that we're looking for, it actually can come from that divine presence within. But then we look at all the things that we think about and behavior that we have that we don't want to connect with the divine. So it makes us as individuals, I think, begin to question whether we can be a divine expression, whether we are a divine expression. And when you read that, that's what I had to laugh, because I was saying, I've asked myself that many times. How can this God and not know the perfect way to react to this? How can I react this way and be the divine presence of life and expression? How can I judge this person? I mean, I don't necessarily have to express it. I have a program running in my head about, they acting crazy and it's stupid. It's going on. And then I back up and said, okay, I'm a divine presence. How am I going down this path and this road with these judgments? And I think that what you're saying there, to me, that's one of the things that helps us is by having a community. Because if we have these moments and things when we're with ourselves, but when we are working together, like Maureen was saying, you give me ideas that makes me think, oh yes, maybe Spirit is in me. Mm-hmm. And then another person will share something, oh, let me see, I need to check this out. Maybe it is more divine. They are having that feeling, but they are big. So I think it does help that we have community, but I think it's a journey that we eventually, to me, it was a journey for me to eventually understand that I could get the divine presence within me. And it was the work of testing it out and practicing it that brought up this sense that, oh, when I think like this and I act like this, I begin to feel like this. And so it's both. It's not one or the other. It's
both
It's
and.
all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
What?
No. Oh,
Desi.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah. No, you can go.
I would-
It's kind of strange that we're having this conversation, because last night, I was had thoughts going through my head, and I kind of said out loud to myself, how did I get here? And it was strange, because I thought about my programming from youth, my programming from my parents, society, TV, and then the thought came to me, how do I get past that programming? How do I get past that's been put in my mind that's really not in my heart? It's just the way, let's just say, the race consciousness has made us be. And so I decided to meditate. So when I meditated, after a while, I wound up going on the computer, which I felt the need to do, and I looked up and saw this meeting was happening. So actually my meditation and getting closer to God brought me to community. So it was a direction that happened to me because I was in need at the time of knowing, how do I get past all of this stuff? Mm-hmm. And I decided to quiet my mind and let Spirit talk to me. And as soon as I opened my eyes, I went on the computer and I found this. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here tonight.
Yes. So the concept of inspiration or desperation comes into play. When we come through inspiration sometimes to find ourselves and find, that everybody here has a God presence. Everybody here. And so we recognize that in other people. So we're inspired to be around certain people. But this person that he describes, well, look at me. I'm poor, weak, miserable, unhappy, disconsolate, and forlorn. Is the observer of those characteristics that? I had a teacher ask me one time when I was just feeling so sorry for myself. I really was in desperation. I was one of those who came to the science of mind out of desperation. And he said to me, is the observer any of those things that you have going on in your life? The sadness, the misery. I couldn't say I was depressed because I don't understand depression, but I was incredibly unhappy. But my unhappiness, my sadness, was being affected by outside influences. But that part of me, that joy part of me, as he said, can never be disturbed unless I let it. And so I took transcendental meditation at his a suggestion, and I went and got initiated in TM, and I've never looked back, because the meditation is where I close my eyes. As Helen Street used to say, close your eyes, the better to see God within. You don't have any distractions in the outer world. But when that one teacher said to me, is the observer of what you're feeling those things? And I thought, why is he asking that question? Of course the observer is not feeling those things. I am. But I didn't understand what he meant. It's that the observer was God. And God would never declare that for anyone. We do this to ourselves because we live in the world of pairs of opposites.
I also woke up this morning and did some a little bit more meditation, and I have a book that
Put the microphone.
I had a book that I never really have opened up, and I think it's Creative Mind by Ernest Holmes. I never opened
Creative Mind and Success, or just Creative Mind? Yeah.
And it was, I opened it to the middle of the book and just started reading from there. And it was a line that said about belief. And it was like, it is as you believe it is. And that means you got to control your belief system.
Yeah.
And be kind of the person that you feel that you need to be or want to be, and not what you've kind of like been programmed to be. Mm-hmm. And your beliefs are so important. So that kind of hit too. I was like, wow, it is as you believe it is. Yeah. So it's kind of important that you watch that, watch that programming. And
it's important. If you use the first person when you're talking about yourself, it makes it so much more important, because I hear you telling me I should be watching this. When you say you should be, use the first person. I should be watching this. Take ownership of your life by using the first person, not from your ego, but from your spiritual self. Because the only name for God in the Bible is I am. Is I am. So I'm just going to say that to you. We're so used to separating ourselves from our feelings by using the second person. And I know I'm an editor, proofreader, and I know that that's my problem. But I'm just going to encourage you, when you say reading creative, I have to tell you, Creative Mind is my all-time favorite book of Ernest Holmes, and I have a first edition, which I'll not bring and show to anybody because it isn't even still has the paper cover on it, because I've held it so close to me all these years. Somebody gave it to me as a gift. So I think what you're saying, if you go back how many Wednesdays when we did belief, faith, and prayer?
3 Wednesdays.
3 Wednesdays. And find that Wednesday night, you'll see yourself coming and going in that particular conversation that we had. Because we talked about belief. We talked about the difference between belief and faith, and how prayer works on our behalf. Not prayer that supplication, or not begging, but knowing that you're in this life because you make a difference. Everyone here is in this life because we make a difference. And we don't even know to what extent we've made a difference. But we do make a difference. So
I was thinking, but Des and I have had a lot of conversations back this. So he seems to have this knack of being guided to the right. I mean, he does, and it's amazing. The right word, or the right person, or the right book, and he's had. So I think that one of the things that I wanted to add with this is that we understand and we are introduced to. I feel like I was introduced to that aspect of the I am. And my whole journey has been trying to express from that place of I am. But it is a journey for me. I don't know if the rest of y'all just got there, but I'm still working
I'm
on
still
that journey
journeying
because I
too,
still
yeah.
find myself going down this other road,
Yeah.
with the thinking sometimes. And especially if I'm on the road and I find myself almost going there with that thinking that's off the path. And so I feel like it's a journey in such that I am increasing the times that I feel like I'm coming from that place of the I am. But I also find that the community, being in a community, and the more I'm in that community of people that are coming from that place, it seems like the stronger that aspect of my being, of saying myself that I am coming from that I am. And I find myself more inclined to catch myself when I start to go there with that person on the road. I find I get halfway through and, I back up.
Yes.
So I find that it's decreasing. It's a journey because I'm decreasing the time that I go here. I mean, and it was stronger before, but it's decreasing by being immersed in an environment where I'm being taught by the people around me, or inspired by the people around me,
So
or
you
inspired by the books that I read.
You don't change the person, you change the thought about the person.
Right.
Yeah.
I shift. Well, I think it's more that I'm shifting the thought about myself, and as I shift the thought about myself, it automatically finds that I shifts my thought about the people around.
Yeah.
But the biggest journey is shifting the thought about myself. And then as I see myself as being a divine creation, and the more I see that, the easier it for me is to see that next person that way. And the faster I go there.
What I wanted to comment on, what we were talking about earlier, that first paragraph about no one can find God for us, each individual must do it for themselves. What I perceive that to be, and I do believe community is imperative and people help one another, but to me, what that means that God's within me, so I know that I'm a whole person, regardless. I don't have to grab things out there. It's just like I've heard people say, with relationships, I knew somebody who said, well, you're not a whole person unless you've got a partner. And I don't agree with that. Or I have to look out, if I feel desperate, unhappy, if I'm trying to reach out there to heal that, I found that doesn't work for me. I have to know that I'm whole, that I'm an expression of God, so therefore I have all the whole God qualities and not, oh gee, well Nancy's got to make me feel whole, or Maureen, that kind of thing. That's what I perceived about that.
So we all have feelings about things, right?
Right.
Some of them, if we had a ticker tape across our forehead and everybody could see what we were feeling, we would be ashamed sometimes. Maybe not so much ashamed, but we would be judged by what it is that we're feeling. So Ernest talks about how we don't deny the condition, we deny the power the condition has over us, right? We don't deny the feelings we're having. We deny the power the feelings have over us. And that's just, Nancy was talking about that. In a heartbeat, you get cut off on the freeway and you have thoughts that are not indicative of our spiritual nature sometimes. And yet, that person's driving down the road completely oblivious to what happened. And sometimes we hold on to stuff like that, unknowingly sometimes, until, it's another interesting thing is we hold on to it until it doesn't have value in our lives anymore. It becomes a part of our story. And the story is boring even to me sometimes. How bad is it for the people who are listening to me? So I think what Ernest is trying to say in that third paragraph, going back to that, Kathy, thank you very much, it would feel discouraging, that I'm not getting it. Everybody else here seems so upbeat and so delighted with their life experience, and I'm not quite there yet. So when I first came to the Science of Mind, I cried a lot whenever they sang that sappy song, I love myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change. I'll always be the perfect me. There's nothing to rearrange. And I thought, yeah, right. Yeah, right. So what I've learned as I've been here is that there may be somebody else in the room on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night who's thinking those same things, that there is something wrong with me. I don't seem to be able to get my life in order. And one of the best things we have at this center are ministers and practitioners who will sit and have a one-on-one with people if they ask. But sometimes it's very hard for people to reach out and ask for help. It's a difficult thing, but it's not as discouraging as it may seem on the surface. I remember when Mike was first in ministry, he kept saying, people could take some information from 12-step program. When people come here for the first time, when they come to an AA meeting for the first time, they tell them, come to 6 meetings before you decide to leave. And yet 6 meetings is enough to get people sometimes by the throat and sometimes by the hand, to get them to come back on to a meeting. But it's also like this philosophy. On the surface, it may seem, as Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith was the keynote speaker at Mike Lattimore's installation last Saturday, and he called it, Mike came to a class, and Reverend Mike Lattimore, he found him in the bathroom about halfway through the class at the break, and he was getting ready to leave. I'm not staying around here for this woo-woo crap, he said, and that's exactly the words he used at the pulpit last Saturday. And here we were at Reverend Mike Lattimore's installation as the new minister at Pasadena CSL. From being in the bathroom saying, I'm not going to stay here any longer, to becoming the minister. It's a giant leap in consciousness is what it is. So we all have those experiences. I can look back on it. Susie, I know you can. Rosalie, for sure. Nancy, it's just part of life, So, who else?
Nancy, I'd like you to share with, is it Desmond? Desi. That one statement that you shared with us in our visioning class about what the minister said about our families, our past, our experiences.
You mean the one when I was describing the minister?
No, the one where you said, the past is the past. Move.
Oh,
Yeah.
whatever happened yesterday happens yesterday, and that's the last. But listen, the conversations I've had with Desi, he's way past that.
Yeah.
He's one of these people that loves his science mind textbook.
He came almost to every Wednesday night when Reverend Mike was doing the meditation. Yeah.
But I think that when we look at this description, the thing, even though that one person has been described in may be a new beginner, but I think that it also, I'm abbreviating it a little bit because as we travel in this journey, on this spiritual journey, we sometimes get discouraged because we haven't reached a certain level. And so the idea of realizing that this is a journey, and what he's describing in here is how we continuously grow. And what all of y'all are contributing to me is that each one of us has experiences where we are there's one day and we're not there, and
It's a
it
dance,
goes,
like a cha-cha.
yeah. So I mean, but you know, being in as long as I have, one of the things I'm saying, it gets the times you're not there begin to decrease, and the times that you are there begin to
Absolutely.
to increase until it begins to be our way of life. But the whole journey, it is about this inner self. And when Kathy was describing, saying the God within, and I was saying, oh, that was the thought that came up last week. It isn't the God within. Everything is the God without, the toes, the head, the fingers, everything. The whole beingness of who I am is the divine. And how I misthink the words is only about me misthinking the words the way I want my life to flow. And so it is that one word or that concept that's been expressed by one person may be harmonious with them. I may describe the same thing and feel uncomfortable with it. So it isn't, it's the spiritual presence that is within me. I feel that is the whole thing I'm discovering. But in discovering this spiritual presence, I am able to easily see it as I look in every face around me. Because when I feel it in that place, everybody looks good. Everything looks better. So I'm beginning to learn the connection, the oneness. It kind of brings up the idea of the oneness of being. So it is a journey. So what he's describing towards the end of this paper is what it seems like we're reaching for this. We're reaching for it, and we begin to see it more and more.
But it's not out of reach for any of us.
It's never
Yes.
out of reach. That's the thing about
Yeah.
it is, more we find it in the soul, in ourselves, the more we realize that it's within reach for everybody, every soul that's in existence.
Right.
And then you all of a sudden want to make everybody understand that.
Well, and in the paragraph on the second page on 112, where toward the bottom, others may show us how they did it. May even suggest how we can proceed, but there is a path that every person must walk alone, yet not alone, because forevermore there is a spirit that beckons, a presence that feels out toward us as we feel toward it. Someday we shall all rest in its warm embrace. And the thing about that paragraph, I love the living the science of mind, because it's just so rich with what he's trying to say. Is the fact that I can't look at somebody who's been in this teaching for 50 years and say, well, I'm not there yet. But I actually feel like that sometimes, you know. I am there. My awareness of being there has not been enhanced quite as effectively as I would like it to affect. I remember one time when Maureen was still the church administrator here, and I was the minister here, and she couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, because I was not behaving like my usual delightful self, apparently, which I have done on occasion, as other people know. But she came to the office door and she goes, what's going on with you? Instead of taking my attitude personally, she said, what's going on with you? I shared her. And she looks at me like this and she went, oh my God, your feelings are hurt. And she realized in that moment that the best thing she could do for me was to console me because my feelings were hurt. I will never forget that as long as I live. She said, "Come here." Like she couldn't come in the office and go toward me. And I walked toward her and she just took her arms, wrapped it around me. I felt like I'd been loved by the embrace of God, like it says right there in that paragraph. So I think sometimes we're hard on ourselves, aren't we? Yeah. And we're harder on ourselves than anybody else is toward us. Because, you know, all those other people who aggravate us are out there dancing somewhere, you know, they're dancing. Anyway, we'll get the 10-minute signal from Renzen tonight. Well, how did this go so fast?
Can I share? This is so perfect for me. And I love that paragraph that is just describing, as my daughter calls it, hot mess. I have had the most amazing, almost 2 years now. I had my accident, my broken legs. I was so isolated and so helpless. And I couldn't go out. People came to me, but I didn't. I mean, when we talk about having a community that helps us grow and stay together and see spirituality in me, all of that went to the wayside. Everything was a big deal. It was a project to go to the bathroom. It was a project to get out of bed, or the boots. And then when I started going out, I felt so conspicuous and not anonymous. I just fell apart. And when you talk about the observer, and I also like that term, the witness, there was something in me that kept saying, "You're not okay, you're not okay. You're going south here. You're just falling apart." One day a friend called me and she just said, "What's going on with you? Something's really wrong." And I said, "I'm not okay." And she said, "Well, I think you need to go get help." And I was willing to have help. I was willing to have people call me out. And I actually, I've been working with this therapist, and I actually told her, this is making me sweat. In 2017, I started falling off a cliff, and I was going to fall down to the beach about 300 feet. I fell into the only bush that was around, and people were able to fish me out. And I told my therapist, she said, "You see, the universe wants you to still be here." And I actually said, ticker tape across here, "Yeah, God wants me to be here so he can mess with me some more." I mean, that was where I got to. My friend called and said that, and I went to the doctor to try to not go to jury duty. I couldn't put the pieces together. He said, "Give me the papers, I'll write on it." He was so artful. He very quietly just spoke as he wrote. "This patient is suffering from anxiety and depression and needs to recover." And when you talked about having an observer inside and then community around where I can connect with those other minds, wow, this is great for me to say this out loud in this way. And I have had a spiritual connection, and it just went away from everything. I just couldn't hold it up. I just couldn't hold it up in those circumstances. And this has given me a lot of understanding and compassion when people fall apart. It's not a thing of will. And it's not that the spiritual connection I had was imperfect and couldn't do it. It was just a hot mess.
So now, what are you now?
I am actually doing what I am is an individual who's doing that thing of doing a lot of observing about what I think and what I believe, and saying, erase the race. That no, don't go there, don't go there. It's like that story about what wolf are you going to feed? And I'm working ceaselessly to be remaining conscious and aware. What am I thinking? How am I reacting? Am I pushing myself too hard? Am I being hard on myself so then I can attack myself for not performing? I'm so much better.
Yeah.
And I thank you for listening.
So the thing that's beautiful about what you shared is that you didn't disappear yourself. You muddled through. And when we think about the trajectory of life, anybody here have a straight shot from where you were 10 years ago to there? No, it's like this. It's all up and down and in and out. And first I thought you were talking about a virtual cliff that you fell off, but it was a real honest to God cliff that you fell off.
Yes, in Oregon on the coast.
Yes. So that's sort of a metaphor for all of us. We're standing on the edge of a cliff and we're trying to decide whether actually you fell, but some of us stand there trying to figure out whether we should jump or fall back. When there's a choice like that, always fall back. But you fell into a bush and your life was saved. And sometimes when we say, well, why was I saved? Why questions are why questions of the heart. The logical mind doesn't give a little care about, I almost said a bad word, but doesn't care. The logical mind doesn't really care, but the heart wants to know. Why was I saved? Why did I find God? Why am I here at this center? Why did I fall in love with this person and not that person? Well, we can all answer that to some degree, Yeah, Harvey Struber's in jail, and I didn't marry him, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Anyway, we have to finish up. We got 3 minutes. You want to close out with something? Just as a reminder of what was read.
That it is a process, and we all
Yes,
have.
yeah.
And that
Good.
We all have those judgments, but that divine creation of who and what we are, those moments that we have thought that are real, those imprints from your family, from your society and all that are just imprints.
Imprints.
Yeah, the reality of the truth is that divine presence is the essence. That's the real. That's reality. And that's what we are, and this journey's about. And the more we focus on the idea that it's all right to be where I am, and I'm in that journey of knowing the truth about my being, I think that we can let go of the judgment and knocking of ourselves. And it's today. And now it's time for that past, let it go.
Okay.
It's today.
So Nancy, I want you to close us out tonight. You have 1 minute to do that.
That's all right.
So it's going to be fast, right? So
I'll try.
so everybody hears it. All right, so let's go
Okay, I'll
within.
try.
All right, good.
So it's just gathered in the idea and understanding that this is a place where we are very grateful to know and to understand that we are the divine in manifestation. And as we journey on that idea and embrace that concept of the perfect presence of life is that which we create for ourselves, and that we willingly are stepping into that idea with our eyes and our arms and our whole mind and whole being open and being receptive. And as we do so, we welcome the opportunity to share this understanding and awareness with all those around us. And it's so with love we leave this experience knowing a greater concept of who and what we are, and we willingly accept it as our truth. And so we let go and we let the divine in all its glory, say yes to life through us. And we know this together as we sing.
And so it is. Thank you all for being here tonight on the first Wednesday of the month.